Welcome back, social media friends and acquaintances and strangers and family. Today I came to talk to you about happiness. And actually, I'm not going to do much talking, I'm going to do some reading. And this reading is a post on social media, and it's about another post on social media or a trend. And this is written by, her name is Tara Vance. And that's her given name. She didn't change her name to Vance like that VP elect, of who which, by the way, up until 4 or 5 years ago, I was recommending his book, Hillbilly Elegy, to anyone who would listen. Because I thought it was that important, it was that well written, and that valuable. And I'd have to reread it from a different angle where I am now to see if I could point out the insincerity, you know? Because I will admit that just like movies, a book can fool you. Now, I would say it's less likely to, or it has to be better put together in order to fool you, unlike a moving picture, which can be pretty crude and still turn you on or scare you or whatever emote you want to emote. So, but books can still fool you. And the power of rhetoric, and for those of you who don't know, and you just heard the word rhetoric and rhetorical question, and maybe you have a vague idea of what a rhetorical question is. It's not a question that's actually looking for an answer, it's just looking for discussion. But rhetoric, as defined, is just persuasive writing or speaking, a style of speaking or writing that can be used to persuade the reader or listener to come to a conclusion or opinion, right? Anyway, this is too long of an intro. I want to read Tara's words. She is a distant cousin of the other guy. I don't know his given name, but it ain't Vance. But yeah, and this woman is an outstanding writer, and every time I read her stuff, it it just resonates with my own kind of thinking. Not all of it, of course, because you know I don't agree with everything she says, and I don't disagree. That's the subtleties of human connection. Where we are now, we're like so polarized. Like, oh, if you disagree, we can't be friends. Even people on the liberal side saying we cannot be friends if we disagree on racism, homophobia, or reproductive rights. I mean, should we should not cut off communication with people we disagree with. It doesn't matter what the subject matter. And if you feel or think that a particular group is maybe uneducated or ignorant or misled, why would you think the problem the the solution, why would you think the solution would be to ostracize them and just push them to the margins and hope they go away? That's really, why I can't really call myself a liberal. I will remain independent till I die because their tactics are just as dirty, underhanded, hateful, spiteful, I could keep going, as the other side. They don't practice what they preach just like the other side. And when you're independent, both sides tell you that you're wrong. Anyway, here we go. There's a social media post going around with a dude bro from the manosphere. See, she teaches me words. Asking if anyone ever noticed that right wing women are happier than left wing women. What about independent women? Are they not even considered? Do they exist? I think they do. Actually, I know they do. Of course, it features a bunch of college-aged, I'm going to say women, because college-aged girls, I don't know. To me, girls should be reserved just like boy, lower. I don't want to be picky here, but anyway, of course, it features a bunch of college-aged women, probably half said dude bro's age. They're doing a debauched version of twerking, as if, See, this is where her opinion gets just is too much. It's like, it's twerking. How could you get a anyway? Uh, then he says someone should do research about it. That research has been done. I'll quote a popular book about it forthwith. The far right has been priming their base for a long time to appear happy. The church does this, too. They'll tell you if you're expressing negativity, followers won't want to be Christian. And I'm focusing on Christians, but this happens in many communities and families, religions and cultures. I'm focusing on Christians because that's this man's base. Feel free to apply to any group that this applies to. That's poorly written. Don't use apply twice in the same sentence. There's a lot of words you could put that. Feel free to affix. Anyway, label. I shouldn't be criticizing her writing while I'm reading it, but I did debate. Should I read it first, and not stumble, or should just go right in, and I always err on the side of authenticity, so right in. Here we go. So then I'm gonna critique the writing. Anyway, they'll tell you it's part of your Christian testimony to show that you are changed, happy, and grateful. In evangelical circles, women are socialized and outright instructed to project an image of unwavering happiness, unity, and energy at all times. They're told this isn't just a personal virtue, but a reflection of their worthiness as wives, mothers, and Christians. Man, we pull the mother card, man. You can do damage when you pull that card. Happiness isn't optional. It's mandatory. The pressure to perform contentment is intense because anything less is seen as a failure, not just of character, but of faith. If you're not joyful, the message is reproachful. You're not praying hard enough, not submitting fully enough, or not serving your family and church with enough of a servant heart. Dude, reading this is giving me dry mouthedness. Oh boy. Women are especially beholden to upholding the facade of familial harmony and spiritual prosperity. Yeah, probably why my mother wouldn't leave my father, even though I know she wanted to a zillion times. Uh, a godly woman doesn't get tired. She runs her household, raises children, attends church, volunteers, and always has a smile on her face. Dissatisfaction or disagreements, especially with their husbands or men in the church, are taboo to voice openly. Everything must look perfect, even when it's not. The theme of my upbringing. Even when dealing with struggle, sadness, or burnout, women are told their happiness is a testimony to God's goodness. Anything else might turn people away from Christ. This relentless pressure to perform is framed as obedience to God's design, and obedience is very important in the patriarchy. It is what maintains the hierarchies. In reality, it's an insidious way to silence women, suppress genuine emotion, and drive those systems of control. You get a lot of benefits when you are a beloved part of those communities, though. It gives opportunities for support and validation and even leadership in appropriate roles, not available to them elsewhere. Pastors tell their congregations their negativity is a spiritual failure, that they're letting the devil in, or being a bad example for their children and the church community. Jokes about belligerent women do a lot of the communication for them. It's good to read something the first time on camera. There are often very trivial, unrealistic analogies used in sermons of secular women who are miserable, frumpy, grumpy, lazy, and ungrateful, just generally sour, who make some uncomfortable decisions because of entitlement and, quote, and grass is greener syndrome, and ruin their lives, comma, compared to the godly women who submit to their husbands and make wise decisions that lead them to prosperity. The unspoken rule is, if you're not happy, you keep it to yourself until you get your faith in order. This sounds like... Never mind. This kind of conditioning, that's my own addition there, creates a culture where authenticity is seen as rebellion. It's your family rebel here. Hi. And rebellion, in their eyes, is kind of seen as the ultimate sin. Oh, wait, now I've lost my... Hold on. I lost my place. For a woman, okay. This kind of conditioning creates a culture where authenticity is seen as rebellion. I mean, this is worth repeating. And rebellion, in their eyes, is kind of seen as the ultimate sin for a woman. I mean, yeah, they're trying to control you. I mean, I just appreciate my mom so much after reading stuff like this because I know even if my mother kept up her appearances and stuff on the outside, she told me the truth. She told me what was going on. She told me her complaints, her grievances. And I'm looking back going, and I never wondered why. And now I know. Because she knows I could handle it. And I don't think anybody else in my nuclear family could. They couldn't. Anyway, ask me how I got kicked out of my family church that my family built. I had a feeling this came from a personal place because she knew a lot about the culture of the church. I used to count the panes of glass in the stained glass windows because I didn't want to hear what that dude was saying. I was only there for appearances, just like this year, me voting. I know it didn't make a difference. I just did it as a statement. But there's a lot of research that looks at demographic data and happiness scales. You know, asking people how happy they are and expecting them to answer in an accurate way, I mean, this is a little wishy-washy here, okay? Who knows who's lying, right? Like, people saying they're happy are lying, people saying they're unhappy are lying. I mean, what do we know, right? But I would say that generally, technology has made us less connected, which makes us less happy. The more connected we are as humans, the more human interaction we have, the happier we are. I mean, it's not rocket science, right? Anyway, allow me to quote a book. Could be dangerous, but let's go. There is no group of Americans more pessimistic than working class whites. Well over half of blacks, Latinos, and college educated whites expect that their children will fare better economically than they have. Among working class whites, only 44% share that expectation. Even more surprising, 42% of working class whites, by far the highest number in the survey, report that their lives are less economically successful than those of their parents. And from the same book, here goes another quote, there is a cultural movement in the white working class to blame problems on society or the government, and that movement gains adherents by the day. Let's keep going. There's another quote. Here is where the rhetoric of modern conservatives, and I say this as one of them, so whoever wrote this book is identifying themselves as a conservative. Here's what the rhetoric of modern conservatives, here's where the rhetoric of modern conservatives fails to meet the real challenges of their biggest constituents. I don't see that word in print often. Instead of encouraging engagement, conservatives increasingly foment the kind of detachment that has sapped the ambition of so many of my peers. What separates the successful from the unsuccessful are the expectations that they had for their own lives. Yet the message of the right is increasingly, it's not your fault that you're a loser, it's the government's fault. Oh. I mean, how do you not find the humor in that? These are quotes from J.D. Vance's Hillbilly Elegy. Holy shit. Wow. She did that to me. Ha! Okay, let that sink in for a minute. Dude is grifting the world. And the evidence of his long con is in millions of homes going unread and unchallenged. Since Vance had changed his entire persona and has turned his sights on everyone else, calling them miserable, as if it's a failure of character, like childless cat ladies. Who are my favorite ladies, by the way. Of course, the far right doubles down on the misogyny by posting pictures of women who are elders, or fat women, or just women who don't look like thin 20-somethings as representations of how the left are ugly compared to the women of the right. Man, I could make a dating video. Maybe I will. Whew. This broadcast to a base of men, many of whom call themselves incels. Incels. Do you know what an incel is? Involuntarily celibate, which means dudes that can't get laid, and that there are actually so many of them now because there used to be shame on dudes who couldn't get laid, and they wouldn't tell people, and they would lie and make it seem like they were, having relations with women and could maybe, connect and engage and have an actual conversation. But now there's so many of them. There's no shame. They gave themselves a label, and they proudly say, yes, we cannot relate to women, but they blame the women and not themselves. How convenient. The new right isn't really a political philosophy. Pay attention here. Though it's a behaviorist campaign of propaganda similar to those industrious propaganda efforts Rockefeller and Carnegie invested in pumping libertarian Christian capitalism into the coal camps. Let me reiterate, the new right is not a political ideology. It is an ever-shifting PR campaign. Workers were encouraged to remain docile and obedient, seeing their purpose as accumulating wealth in heaven. Yeah, I mean, we all knew this. They did the same thing to slaves, dude. Kidnap them, bring them over here, and say, Jesus will take care of you in the afterlife. Just work your fucking ass off for nothing now. Memorize these songs and these passages from the Bible you ain't never heard of before. This is your God. Obey. Because that's all religion is a tool to make you obey. Huh? And I got brought up with my mother's main thing that she drove into me. Think for yourself, Donald. I heard that more than anything. Why do you think she wanted to impart that on me? Why? Ask yourself. Maybe she wasn't really allowed to. They were heavy on the dangers of labor organizing being a path to sin, moral decay, and chaos. They were also heavy on temperance, alcohol being a sin, as it was a threat to happiness. The whole prohibition movement was really fueled by the rage at mongrel Melungians. And Ms. Vance identifies as one of those people. Refusing to work the mines or fields because they made more money and were happier moonshining and woodworking and blacksmithing and gardening than they were performing joyful slavery during the Reconstruction. Just watch the right for their happiness propaganda. That's their way of priming the Southerners to be happy sharecroppers once they deport the people who keep our food supply robust. Women and all people are generally happy, or not, based on a combination of inherent and external factors, but the performance of happiness leads to familial dysfunction that self-perpetuates for generations. Not here. My brother, my sis, my nuclear family, we ain't make no kids. You know what? I never thought of it this way, but I'm gonna say I'm fucking proud of that. Because I was the oldest. And you know, maybe they didn't follow every example I set. They followed that one. We stopped the fucking cycle. Good job, Dave and Carrie. Good job. And I'm going to read that paragraph again. Women and all people are generally happy or not based on a combination of inherent and external factors, but the performance of happiness leads to familial dysfunction that self-perpetuates for generations. Cousins. Happiness is largely a byproduct of hope. And people only try to manufacture happiness when they know that they will be depriving people of hope for a better tomorrow. Well written, Tara. Thank you very much.